been put through the mill, we're on page 619. If you've been put through the mill, you may have to do a lot of paying from a temporal standpoint, but not spiritually. As a statement, the fathers are eaten sour grapes and the children's teeth are set on edge. This is true temporally. This world of ours has paid the temporal, cultural consequences of Caligastia's misfortune, but not spiritually. No human being, status, has been in any way spiritually jeopardized. But our job has been made tougher down here in every other way except spiritual. Regardless. It's still tough. They're pretty feeble-minded people. Yes, I would say now they're possessed by their own lusts and passions, to use the biblical expression. That no normal-minded person ever was possessed by a devil. Their compensation. All their own emotional damn foolishness, in other words. Then they give us an interesting estimate. They say for about 25,000 years, this thing ran neck and neck, but gradually the good generated as a result of resisting this rebellion began to pick up momentum. And at about 25,000 years after the rebellion, they estimated this was pretty even season. As much enough good had been produced to equally evil that had come out of it. And of course, in the remaining 175,000 years, the sum of good has grown out of all proportion to the evil. And again, they point out, why would they destroy Lucifer as long as this is taking place? They're going to get all the good that this old boy can produce involuntarily and indirectly. That's how he's paying for it. One error of human thinking respecting these problems consists in the idea that all evolutionary mortals on an evolving planet would choose to enter upon the paradise career if sin had not cursed their world. The ability to decline survival does not date from the times of the Lucifer rebellion. Mortal man has always possessed the endowment of free will choice regarding the paradise career. And then he goes on and says, I've told you all I can tell you. But really, you've got to live longer and see more. And when you get to paradise and listen to the masters of philosophy talk, you're going to feel a lot better about this. But even then, you're not going to be fully satisfied. You're going to have to go out as an administrator and work with these problems. And then in time, when you develop capacity to comprehend, you will gradually begin to comprehend these issues. In other words, be patient. These are two, I think, of the most fascinating papers in the book. Pathology is always more fascinating than physiology. Right? Sure. When a guy's well, it isn't news. When he's sick, he gets in the headline. The peaceful family isn't news, and the papa beats up mama, and a reporter hears about it, this might make the front page. You folks have questions about these papers? I've tried to jump all over this book. That's true. I've got feelings I'd like to know more about this. I do have a feeling of satisfaction concerning this explanation. I have a feeling that I've got about all that I can comprehend. I don't think God stirred him up. I think he stirred himself up. I think he's been dealt with very fairly. I have a feeling that this has been nicely handled. Very nicely. Nobody got pushed around. But a universe authority. Lucifer did some pushing around. Remember, his second in command was Seraphim. When she refused to join him, they tried to destroy her. You see, the ideal is, when he really gets that important, he'll write you down. Can't you see in the days of the Inquisition, somebody piling the faggots around your ankle? And can you see that sinless smile as they bring the torch over? And they say, "Daughter, why? This is because we want you." Crackle, crackle.
I want to ask you something else.
Yes, ma'am.
There's a book that came out entitled A Cure for Judas. What do you think happened here? Maybe it's been here, but I haven't read it.
Judas committed suicide, yes.
Well, I know that, but I...
He was completely disillusioned.
What
He
happened
sold
to
Jesus down the river.
What happened to his
They don't say.
I wonder if... Oh, my goodness, they would love him.
No, they do not.
That was first. He tried to explain it out here.
That was first.
Well, that wasn't Bill, I'm going to research how you're gone. I'm sure the reason there is an insinuation that he was composed of law. He was not?
The book,
He was.
the book says nothing about his future. However, they say that his name has become an anathema in the universe. And don't you think it would be kinder just to let him sleep? His name is inscribed in gold in everybody's book of stone toes that knows the story.
I want to tell what this was saying one day, that it's almost impossible for anybody to go to hell. We think Jesus is there, but we're not sure.
I don't think it's that much of a lead pipe, copper covered, double riveted city.
It looks in there all the different reasons why he was as he was.
Yes. And he also has free will choice. He didn't have to continue to be this way. Each human being is a product of three factors. In physics, they speak of vectors, which are interaction forces, and the resultant is a net. If you're being pushed 20 miles an hour north and 10 miles an hour south, you're going to go north at the rate of 10 miles an hour. That's the result. Okay. Factor or vector number one, heredity. Number two, environment. Number three, what do you want to be? Illustration. Heredity is the 52 cards in the deck. Environment is the rules of which you still have to bid and play each hand. And skill has something to do with the score. When I win, this is a tribute to skill. When I lose, the cards were terrible. You follow me?
Yes.
You have something to do with it. You see, if you don't, it's funny. It's fake. It's rigged. If Judas couldn't make this choice, then this is a setup. If Jesus was not a bona fide human being, if he didn't sweat blood, literally, then this is a fake performance. I want no part of it. It's got to be for real, all the way across the board. It's got to be fair.
Well, Judas could not have sold him out, even though he could not have sold him out even as a human being.
I know.
He did not think he was the man.
The people who bought used Judas with contempt. Judas had hoped for a seat in the Jewish Senate, and what he got was the price of a good, healthy slave, showing the contempt which the Sanhedrin had for him, a follower who would sell his leader.
He thought it was the
Yes.
law of insolvency or something.
Right. Well, we've explored part of the spiritual life now. is when human beings have earned the happy Eden which they mourn as having lost and which they never had. I wonder if we really would like to live on such a world. I don't think so. I'm afraid we might be put in an institution for the retarded. Much better that we live in this environment if we were too left for. What do you suppose the average IQ is on a world settled in light and life? We say 100. Maybe the average IQ on such a world is 140, which is on the borderline of what we call genius. Maybe that's just average.
I'm not getting lost in that running around loose.
Yes, quite conceivable, Clark, yeah.
What is the average here?
100.
In the world?
100. 100 is the average, yes. We wouldn't fit too well with you. I think we're better off where we are. I don't envy you. Let's consider what are the advantages of a world such as ours, which is not only not settled in light and life, but is in what kind of a status quo, the Negro picture defined as being in a hell of a shape. I can see some advantages to our type of world. There are no atoms, no planetary planets, no planetary government. But we're up against the buzzsaw of enforced decisions. We have to make up our minds. We have to do things. We're under the whiplash of necessity in this world. And I'm not so sure that we can do pretty well in our short life as compared with these people in their long life. They're born into a very high cultural level. But when they advance too far, they penalize them. They make them go back and get experience on less advanced worlds. They're getting too far away from typical human beings. I get a big thrill out of reading this paper. It's to me a pretty good description of an improvement on the average person's concept of heaven. Most of us don't visualize this far, do we? This is better than heaven. You want to take something? We're playing around 626. When a world is settled in life and life, apparently it's got it made, hasn't it? But it hasn't. It's only entered the first stage of life and life. And I'll bet a cookie when it enters the seventh stage of life and life, it'll discover that it's entered the first stage of something else. These buds keep opening out of roses. You never get to the end. You attain your goal, and the last goal always opens up a new horizon. Suddenly, you move up in the escarpment, the final goal, and the great plain of further challenge stretch out in front of you. You can rest for them. You need encouragement. Let me read you something. I think I can find it. They're coming about time. That's way back then. Creative growth is unending but ever satisfied, endless in extent but always punctuated by those personality-satisfying moments of transient goal attainment, which serve so effectively as the mobilization prelude to new adventures in cosmic growth, universe exploration, and deity attainment. Then they go on and they say, think of mathematics. No matter how big a number you think of, you can always add one, and still add one. At the same time, this infinite series can be total at any point. And this total, more properly subtotal, provides the fullness of the sweetness of goal attainment for a given person at a given time and stage. But sooner or later, this same person begins to hunger and yearn for new and greater goals, and such adventures and growth will be forever forthcoming in the fullness of time and in the cycle of adventure. You see, they don't just make you keep moving. You graduate, and you've got it made. You're a graduate now. You're full-grown adult. Not to go to school anymore. And they let you have all the fun of being full-grown adult until one day, when you've had your fill of it, you begin to get a little restless. Your feet develop a new and higher grade of itch, and you yearn for a new horizon. And that is when they break the news to you. Oh yes, at the time you graduated, we took care of it at the time you were baby. We matriculated you as a freshman in a higher university. Anytime you're ready. Don't bother you with that. It would be cruel. They deny you all the feeling of the fruits of success. They let you get your fill of these fruits and feel that it tastes sweet. You know? And finally that sweetness becomes flying. It's like honey, or a little more than a little is much too much. You see, the thing that we got is we get personality, and personality is endlessly adventurous, and that's why the adventure will be endless. But that doesn't mean that we don't sit down and hang around. I love that. At any time, the infinite series may be total. More properly, a subtotal. Oh, that's on so many for. I wonder if I can find it. There's another one in here. Let me see. I think that's the other one. Now, this has to do with equality of opportunity. I'm looking for a paraphrase that only to use a slightly different metaphor. There comes a period. You're given a period during which the universe horizon stands still and the personality takes the sweetness of success. They don't make you move on until you want it. And you get to paradise and go through the paradise regime. You're possessed with an all-consuming desire to worship. They never make you stop until you get satisfaction. They do this. They try to give you improved techniques of expression so it won't take you forever. But they never say, look, old girl, we got a job for you to do. They wait until you finally, one day you say, well, for now I've said what I did. I thank you for this. You've got to leave transient satisfaction in work. I like the fact that this universe is sentimental as well as efficient. They never forget that we're people. You've got a pal who's lagging. You say, I like to wait. You don't like to wait idly. But they'll dig up an assignment for you so that you can profitably use your time while you're waiting for someone within reason to catch up. Sure. I don't know. Now this world, English at the present time is the dominant language on earth. Even in India, when people from different parts of that subcontinent want to communicate, they have to use English because they speak so many languages. 100 years ago, I would have said French. I don't know. I say English has as good a chance as any language.
You didn't finish it, you tried to order another one.
Oh, it's easy. You say, you know, don't cerveza muy frío.
One significant facet of that is the revelation itself.
Yeah, but it'll be translated.
There's presentation being original that way.
Maybe not, maybe America actually has a meaning of the word.
Possibly the answer is on page 597, the question you raised. To discuss our folks' soul age. And our discussion of social fraternity and intellectual cross-fertilization there. If we're going to change national and racial literature, we've got to become multilingual. I think multilingualism is at least a temporary approach, an immediate approach to the problem of a language. Esperanto's been tried, other artificial languages have been tried, they don't go over.
I think our school should be rearranged to where you required to study at least 2 languages, or that is 2 at a time.
I think this is excellent. I had the good fortune to go to a school where they started the first foreign language in first grade. I elected to study my second foreign language in terms of my first, which was fun.
Whatever language you speak, French and Spanish.
No, no, German is the one language that I really got. But I started to study French and German. La Livre still didn't do the same as that book. And then I don't translate it properly.
In South America, several families are about some of the stuff and the kids who speak German.
Yes.
But there's lots of Germans down there.
I use German in Latin America. It isn't Spanish. It isn't Spanish. I can read French and write it, and I can speak Spanish, or could. But I never could speak French. Well, back to the spirit of light and life. It seems to me that we're back on 626 and 7. I think our problem in perceiving the pattern of what happens to a world here is that we don't see the final destiny of these worlds. If we could only visualize a typical or Vantan inhabited world in the next universe age, this would all lead right into a logical conclusion. But as nearly as I can see, these worlds are getting more and more refined. Increasingly, people are preparing themselves in this life for the next life. They're learning the system language, they're learning the local universe language, and on the oldest such world that has been observed by this author, some of the older models are learning the super universe language. These folks are getting ready to bypass the whole monastic career, aren't they? And yet there is no world known to the author which is free from death. Some folks still die, as we discussed in this group. At such a stage, it probably would be a social stigma to be a member of a family who died. You know, we commented about our country club. Joe and Mary are discussing the probable marriage of their daughter, and well, Tommy's an awfully nice boy, but you know, they died. There's something wrong with that thing. They still die. I'd like to raise some questions. If you suppose these people are going to continue forever as reproducing beings, that's an interesting question. Will the progeny of these folks always find the portal open in the core of the finality? What will happen to mortals on the perfected worlds of the seven super universes when they're all settled in light and light, and when the Supreme Being has ceased his growth? He's achieved it. Remember, everything that we associate with growth is because we are growing within the Supreme. And when he finishes his growth, growth as we know it will be a past event in universe history. Yes, he will. So you can take it from speculate. He's finite, so he can think.
I believe you have the guess, though, that he will take on an entirely different role at that time.
Oh, yes, I agree. Yes. But the growth such as we know it will stop.
That's why the theory in outer space will not be evolution.
Not in the sense, not as we understand it. They will be as different from us as we are different from the central universe. And don't ask me what that difference is. I don't know. Yeah? I know we're asking questions. I don't know who's asking questions.
You know what, I don't understand how it is.
Just do that. One's an unfolding of the other. Well, because, as I suspect, you can't translate from universe to English. But you could from Satanian. And you can't translate probably from universe to Satanian, but if you go through Nebadon, or the tongue of salvation, you can make it. I suspect that these languages are arranged vertically, and you've got to go from one to another to the other to get down. No context.
Oh, honey, we won't mind it. We won't have, in the next one, maybe all the same discussions that we have in this room. Except that, what's that little thing that's going to just trot us along, unification.
This paper points out an interesting relationship again between parts and wholes. Example, this world is not settled in light and light. The Jesus of Nazareth was settled in light and light 1900 years ago. And I assume there were some predecessors too. I don't think that's as unique. Enoch was translated from this world. I think he was personally settled in light and light. Huh? No fair, he didn't know fair with that. But Elijah sounds to me as though he made it. Had Michael been an ordinary mortal, he would have never died. He refused what he thought of him. Again, our world can move on through successive stages of life and life, independent of the higher unit. But it takes all the worlds in Satania to settle the system.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking that we have a follow suit. In other words, take our place in the cosmic scheme, setting light and life.
We can achieve all of the planetary values of the seventh stage of light and life. Any world can, yes, sir. All the planetary values. Now, they will be limited in their relationships to the higher units. But a planet can be settled in the seventh stage of light and life, and this would require the settlement of the whole super universe, theoretically. And nothing is anywhere near that as far as that. I think the system can progress pretty far, even though it may be the only system settled in a local universe. It can have all of the internal values of advanced progression, but it can't have the external values. It's got to wait for the rest of the units to catch up. A system as a whole, just like a planet is a whole, just like a person is a whole, in the smallest sense of that word. These folks go on and tell us what happens in the advanced stages of light and life And I'm pretty sure that the highest unit thus far settled is the local universe. I'm positive some of the oldest local universes made. But I'm darn sure that not even a minor sector can settle. Because in that same minor sector there will be new universes of an age comparable to ours. But they go right on and say, they deduce what's going to happen. And they deduce the future by what they see happen internally in these advanced, localized areas. On page 635, three paragraphs from the bottom, we arrive at conclusions regarding the readjustments which would probably attend the realization of hitherto unattained levels of evolutionary progress by observing the results of such achievements on the individual world and in the experiences of individual mortals living on these older and highly developed worlds. Let it be made clear that the administrative mechanisms and governmental techniques of the universe or super-universe cannot in any manner limit or retard the evolutionary development or spiritual progress of an individual inhabited planet or of any individual mortal on such a sphere. In some of the older universes, we find worlds settled in the fifth and the sixth stages of light and life, even far extended into the seventh epoch, whose local systems are not yet settled in light. Younger planets may delay system unification, but this does not in the least handicap the progress in an older and advanced world. Neither can environmental limitations, even on an isolated world, thwart the personal attainment of the individual mortal. Jesus of Nazareth, as a man among men, personally achieved the status of light and life over 1900 years ago on Uranus. New things happen. A new type of universe organization is forming here. Let's just highspot some of these, I think, very significant things. First of all, the mansion world stopped being used as mansion world for the reasons that people just don't go there anymore. Used to keeping them up. Well, what happened? Well, the finality's taken over. That's logical. The mansion world is a movement of the finality's world. They stand out and take the moons over. And very intriguing to me. We're not permitted to reveal the nature of the work of the finaliters who will supervise such rededicated mansion worlds. You have, however, been informed that there are throughout the universes various types of intelligent creatures who have not been portrayed in these narratives. It's a whole new development that we don't know anything about, except it's nothing that has to do with mortals. Apparently, internal administration gets more and more concentrated on the system level. Planetary princes become planetary sovereigns. The system sovereign begins to expand out into the legislative and judicial function. The rulers of the constellations begin to live up to their names, the Most High. They begin to become autonomous, dealing directly with the super-universe government. Whereas the local universe government begins to deal more with grand universe obligations. In the fourth era of light and life, a whole new alignment takes place. For the first time, the Union of Days begins to function. Union of Days. The Trinity Ambassador mobilizes the faithful of days. There's 100 faithfuls of days. This is the first active participation of Trinity personality in the government. The finalities, for the first time, acknowledge the jurisdiction of this council. They've acknowledged no authority this side of paradise up until then. In time, the associated inspector, representative of the chief executive of the super universe, mobilizes the 10,000 assigned centrals on the local system. as the universe stabilization body. Gabriel becomes associated with the first body, the Father Melchizedek with the second. Little by little, a new alignment of government is shaping up in a perfected local universe. If I were to speculate, I would say that in the next universe age, these local universes are going to be run by three people. The union of age, Gabriel, and the Father Melchizedek as a triune executive. Well, where's Michael in his creative associates on these? I think Michael will forever be the titular sovereign of this local universe. Just like he carries the title of planetary prince of Uranus, he just doesn't function that way. I think Michael will be in outer space. I don't think he'll be here. But I bet every time he goes into paradise from outer space, he stops off here. And can you imagine the grand jamboree that would take place on Salvage and all these periodic visits? You talk about Christmas decorations. They'll really have that place lit up. Because I don't think it'll happen too often. That's a long ways in from out there. Yes, he is. The reason I raised the question about procreation is I raised the question about death. You see, I don't think Michael will ever leave unless his creative associate leaves with him. And if he leaves, there aren't going to be any more seraphim. Hence no custodians of the souls of ascending survivors. And I'm sure she's going to leave. Because she'd be wasted here, so would he. This perfected local universe requires administrative excellence. It does not require the presence of two creators anymore. Their presence is needed in outer space. You can speculate all you please. All you can say is, yeah, I don't know. Except it sure is going to be different. The papers give us warrant for this concept of the Creator Son. And they discussed it's in the discussion, I think, of the Paradise Son again. Yes, they're talking about the three orders of sonship and collaboration. Trinity Teacher Sons, Magisterial Sons, and Creator Sons. In the harmony of their triune activities, these Paradise Sons of God ever function in the vanguard of the personalities of deity as they follow the never-ending expansion of the divinity of the first great source descended from the everlasting Isle of Paradise into the unknown depths of space. These are the trailblazers. And again, when they discuss what is this expansion, if you jump from one part to another in elimination, the master force organizers go out into space and mobilize its energies to become gravity responsive to the paradise pull of the universal Father. And subsequently there come the Creator Sons, who organize these gravity responding forces into inhabited universes, and therein evolve intelligent creatures to receive unto themselves the spirit of the Paradise Father, and subsequently ascend to the Father to become like him in all possible divinity attributes. The ceaseless and expanding march of the Paradise creative forces through space seems to presage the ever-extending domain of the gravity grasp of the universal Father and the never-ending multiplication of various types of intelligent creatures who are able to love God and be loved by Him, and who, by thus becoming God-knowing, they choose to be like Him, may elect to attain paradise and to find God. This is big. This is so big. As you read the paper which contemplates the end of evolution, you find yourself, as we suggested, you find what appears to be a mountain range, but it's not. It's an escarpment. You're looking out over a new and vaster plateau with a new horizon line. Just on about now. But, you see, going back to Lucifer, here's a piece of exquisite artistry slowly unfolding. And it's sort of like a numbskull that comes along with a big paintbrush and say, look, we got to tear the statue, you know. Don't want to reconvene. Appendix 16 from the sixth draft of a study of the Master Universe entitled The Nature of God the Ultimate. It may prove helpful to assemble in this appendix what the papers have to say about God the Ultimate. We are informed that the evolution of the Supreme Being is associated with the growth of the super-universes, and that sometime, when they have been perfected, the Supreme will emerge and will be contactable by creatures. He will then become the experiential ruler of the super-universes and will function under the over-control of God the Ultimate. This emergence of the Supreme makes possible the formation of the first experiential Trinity, of which he is a member. We have been told that the Master Architect now coordinates the affairs of the Master Universe, and that these activities will someday be augmented by the functions of the first experiential Trinity. This Trinity is destined to bring about the evolutionary unification of the Master Universe, and as the deity consequence of the sometime complete unification of this Trinity, God the Ultimate will emerge, will power personalized as the sovereign of this master creation. Section 1, Origin and Emergence of the Ultimate. The Ultimate is now present in Havona, present in the absonite and superpersonal sense. He is not a past eternal deity. He had a beginning, but he is a future eternal being. He is a derived deity. He was eventuated by the Paradise Trinity. He is not now fully in existence. He is a becoming reality, an actualizing reality. The real growth and eventual emergence of the Ultimate depends on the formation of the first experiential Trinity. Since this Trinity includes the Supreme Being, it can hardly form in fact until the Supreme has completed its growth. We know that Trinity functions always encompass deity reality, and that such realities always tend to personalize. We are told that the first experiential Trinity will sometime unify in completion. This will require the completed development of the entire Master Universe, and this is possible because it does have limits. When this dual goal has been achieved, completed universe and unified Trinity, it will cause the emergence, the actualization of God the Ultimate. The Ultimate emerges at this time, because he has encompassed all the values of insanity in the master universe. He has put them together, unified them on a final creative level in his emerged deity. The factual appearance of the ultimate means that all transcendental values have been coordinated on final creative levels. In other words, he has synthesized the following realities. 1. Absonite superpersonal values. 2. Time-space transcendent values. And 3. Eventuated experiential values. About the ultimate. The ultimate emerges at this time because he has encompassed all the values of insanity in the master universe. He has put them together, unified them on a final creative level in his emerged deity. The factual appearance of the ultimate means that all transcendental values have been coordinated on final creative levels. In other words, he has synthesized the following realities. 1. Absonite superpersonal values. 2. Time-space transcendent values. And 3. Eventuated experiential values. Section 2. Relation of the ultimate to the deity and trinity of paradise. Much as the supreme is something of a representation of the paradise trinity to the finite level, so also in a qualified sense does the ultimate portray the paradise trinity to the absonite level. But this is true only during the pre-personal eras of experiential power development. When, as finite creatures, we want to personify the paradise trinity, we should think of the Supreme Being. In a similar manner, the transcendentalists would visualize the ultimate. The paradise deities do not now personally collaborate with the ultimate. They work with him as with the Supreme through the paradise trinity. This manner of working will change in some unknown way when these experiential deities emerge from the pre-personal eras of development. With regard to his presence in the post-Avona creation, the Universal Father has chosen to be limited by the evolving Supreme, conditioned by the eventuating ultimate, and coordinated with the Absolute. Similarly, the extra-Avona presence of the Eternal Son, aside from being personalized in the Paradise Son, is conditioned by the Supreme and by the ultimate. Since the Infinite Spirit pervades all space, it would appear that he is not conditioned in his presence outside Avona, as are the Father and the Son. To the post-Avona universes, the Infinite Spirit is distributed to the Master Spirit on sub-absolute levels. The collective attributes of the Master Spirit are quite similar to the attributes of the ultimate, for collectively they are omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. And Master Spirit number 7 can express the attitude of experiential deity, including the ultimate, in the Paradise Council. Section 3. Nature of the ultimate. Like the Supreme, the ultimate is wholly experiential. The ultimate is even somewhat unique in this sense. He is bounded on both sides by an experiential trinity. The other experiential deities are not so situated. There is no experiential trinity that could have unified to give emergence to the Supreme. This evolution depends on the collaboration of the Supreme Creators and Triune Paradise Deity. And with God the Absolute, we encounter a being that is experiential, existential. The ultimate is described as self-projected deity. Is this because his antecedents are in the first experiential trinity and his destiny in the second? There are two sub-absolute levels in the master universe on which growing power-personality unification can focalize. The supreme power personalizes on the first level of unifying deity revelation in time and space. The ultimate, when completed, constitutes an expansion of unified deity on the second level of creative self-realization. But the ultimate is more than an amplification of the supreme. The natures of the three experiential deities have experience in common, but are otherwise different. In nature, God the Supreme is evolutionary experiential. God the Ultimate is transcendental experiential. God the Absolute is existential experiential. The completed ultimate has actualized the absolute values of paradise. This has been accomplished by power-personality synthesis, and it has been done by this experiential deity on transcendental levels that are in relation to, but are above, time and space. After the completion of all the growth of power-personality synthesis, and after complete actualization, God the Ultimate is defined as 1. The deity result of the unification of the first experiential trinity. 2. The deity that personalizes absolute and transcendental divinity. 3. The deity that encompasses those phases of ultimate reality that are A. Personally experienceable, B. Control directing, C. Tensionally unifying, and D. Many other unrevealed phases of ultimacy. This definition of the completed ultimate will bear analysis. We are sure that the personally experienceable phases refer at least as far to the personality of God the Ultimate. This personality, or superpersonality, is contactable by other personalities. The control directing phases might stand for something that is analogous to the function of the Almighty in relation to the Supreme. We are given a name for this aspect of ultimate deity. It is called the omnipotent. The tensionally unifying phases must refer to some action of ultimate mind that unifies the omnipotent with God the Ultimate, as on finite levels, the Supreme Mind unifies the Almighty with God the Supreme. The many other unrevealed phases of ultimacy that are encompassed suggest that the emergence of the ultimate is a more complex process than the actualization of the Supreme. God the Ultimate is then inseparable from the other than personal aspects of his deity nature. We have considered the nature of the ultimate in fairly general terms. Let us now consider certain specific qualities of the transcendental nature. 1. The omnipotent. The power phase of the ultimate is a transcendental version of the Almighty, the omnipotent. We deduce that the omnipotent is to the ultimate what the Almighty is to the Supreme. We further deduce that the omnipotent is a being of great cosmic power. Emergent energy, puissant energy, and gravity energy are levels of force energy evolution that reflect the intelligent action of the ultimate. Here the cosmic functions of the ultimate encounter the physical activities of the seven master spirits who operate in the same energy level. A similar situation exists on the level of universe power, where the over-control of the Supreme encounters the influence of the master spirits. We should also consider the sevenfold controllers, whose functions constitute the physical control level of God the Sevenfold, and whose success in finally achieving material equilibrium in the superuniverses will constitute the completed evolution of the physical control of the Almighty. We have ventured the possibility that the sevenfold controllers might expansion in future relations with the omnipotent ultimate in their creations of outer space. See Appendix 10, Section 4. Will the sevenfold become tenfold in outer space? 2. Ultimate mind. We are informed that infinite mind ignores time. Ultimate mind transcends time. Cosmic mind is conditioned by time, and so is space. Ultimate mind must be related to the tensionally unifying aspect of ultimacy that we have already studied. We are told less about the mind of ultimacy than about the other characteristics of this experiential being. 3. Transcendent spirit. We are told that evolving spirit emerges from the deity absolute and passes through the now in grasps of the supreme and the ultimate before finding final lodgment in the spirit gravity circuit of the eternal sun. We deduce that the ultimate has a spiritual nature and that he is concerned in some manner with the creation and the evolution of spiritual beings. The Melchizedek light carriers refer to the transcendental and eternal spirit of obscurity that may sometime be bestowed upon their midnight project by God the Ultimate. We deduce the spirit of the Ultimate is, or will be, bestowable on creatures. 4. Supernal absonite. The word absonite has more than one form and more than one meaning in the papers. It is used to designate the transcendental level of reality, as in the phrase, the absonite level. It is used to denote a super philosophy, as in the expression, neither philosophy nor absonity are interpenetrated. It is used to indicate creature status, as in the stated question. We can describe beings who are personalized, but how could an absonitized being ever be explained? And in describing the master architects, they are spoken of as possessing master minds, superb spirits, and supernal absonite. It is from this latter quotation that the caption to this paragraph, supernal absonite, is taken. Ultimate beings must have a quality in their nature that is beyond spirit, just as spirit is something other than and more than mind. We submit that God the Ultimate may be more than transcendental in potential, but he could hardly be less than a transcendentalist. If they have supernal absonite, we are sure that he does also. This question of absonity and absonite is something that also relates to ascending mortals. We are informed that before ascenders leave the local universe, they will achieve the full satisfaction of equality and self-realization regarding intellectual, artistic, and social pursuits. Then they encounter a certain spirit differential that will not be equalized until they traverse the last circle of the Havana career. And then the ascenders will become conscious of a new absonite differential, which can be leveled off only by the group attainment of ultimate status, seventh-stage spirit. This strongly suggests that the development of a supernal absonite quality of being is a part of some post-spiritual evolutionary growth of ascendance. A further note concerning the word absonite. In the author's opinion, this is a coined word, a composite word. It appears to be made up of absolute and finite. Consider absolute and finite. Put the first part of absolute with the last part of finite, and we have absolute. Absolute. 5. Superpersonality. We submit that God the Ultimate is not a personality in the strict sense of that term. The Ultimate is a superpersonality. Consider what the papers have to say concerning the three functions of the Father that take place on levels of sub-infinite value and relative divinity expression. He acts pre-personally when he fragments the justice. He acts personally as the created being He acts superpersonal as with eventuated absonite beings. God the ultimate is in part defined as a synthesis of absonite superpersonal values. But this does not mean that God the ultimate will be non-contactable by personality. The prepersonal, the personal, and the superpersonal are all linked together and are associated chemically. Section 4, Attributes of God the ultimate. Of all the attributes of the ultimate, perhaps the most characteristic is his transcendence of time and space. The ultimate is transcendental deity, and the word transcendental certainly implies something that exists in relation to time and space, but is not limited by either. The ultimate is sub-absolute, that has inherent capacity to make functional contact with the absolute level. And we are informed that the ultimate is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. 1. Omnipotence of the ultimate. Sometime in the future, the ultimate will exercise transcendental over-control of the administration of the emerged Almighty Supreme. Omnipotence is the power to do all, but this does not mean that the omnipotent will personally do all that is done. Neither does omnipotence mean the power to do the non-doable. Omnipotence creates, and in the creation of things and beings, also produces their basic nature. Therefore must circles be circular in their nature, and not split. Providence is a function. It is the summation of the other than personal over-control of the universe, extending from the sevenfold through the Almighty to the ultimacy of deity. The function of providence is a measure of the positive motion of both universes and personalities in the direction of the eternal goals in the Supreme, and then in the ultimate. 2. Omniscience of the ultimate. The ultimate mind transcends time, and this transcendence of time implies foreknowledge. But omniscience does not mean the knowing of the unknowable. Neither does ultimate foreknowledge mean that finite will has been abridged. Even sub-omniscient, supreme unification of all finite choosing does not abrogate free will. It merely reveals the positive good versus a negative evil directional trend of the evolutionary universes and their inhabitants. In the present age, free will choice of both creators and creatures can operate only within the limits set by the architects of the master universe. 3. Omnipresence of the ultimate. If the transcendence of time implies foreknowledge, then we submit that the transcendence of space is omnipresent. Space is no barrier to omnipresent deity, for this presence unceasingly patrols the master universe. The space presence of the ultimate extends or will extend to the periphery of the master universe. This time-space transcendent omnipresence of the ultimate intervenes between the time-space ubiquity of the Supreme and the timeless and spaceless presence of absolute being. Section 5. Relation of the ultimate to the master universe. The appearance of the post-Avona creations of the master universe is dependent experientially on the following: in potential on the absolute, in direction on the ultimate, in evolutionary coordination on the supreme. Within the master universe, the ultimate is working out the creative organization of the absolute to potentiality. This must mean that the ability of all sub-absolute creators to create is dependent on this action of creative organization by the ultimate. The ultimate acts as the over-controller and actionite upholder of the master universe. The unification of this domain is by virtue of his action, and the ultimate is power personalizing as the sovereign of this creation. Supreme and ultimate constitute the fundamental association of sub-absolute deity. Together, they correlate all master universe created growth. We have previously noted that which is pre-supreme is pre-created. That which is post-ultimate is super-created. The entire story of creation and of evolution and of eventuation, the entire experiential story of the master universe is the story of the supreme and of the ultimate. Section 6. Relation of the ultimate to the transcendental. Transcendentalers are neither finite nor infinite. They are abstinent. They are neither creatures nor creators. They are eventuated beings. As a person God created, as a superperson he eventuated. Are all transcendentalers eventuated? Apparently so. But they may not all be persons or even superpersons. Beings can be abstinentized as well as personalized. Gravity messengers who are attached to the mortal finalities are personalized. Their messenger colleagues attached to the non-mortal finality cores are not. They are abstinentized. Transcendentalists are quite unique as a group. They even use a form of energy, trinota, that is different from anything else on Paradise or in Nirvana or in the super universe. Transcendentalists exhibit loyalty to the Paradise Trinity and give obedience to the ultimate. They are not concerned with the affairs of the super or central universes. They are concerned with the master universe. They are subject to God the ultimate. The architects of the master universe. These architects are the governing body of the transcendentalists. We may accordingly deduce that they are also subject to God the ultimate. Master force organizers. These are the organizers of the space nebulae, and such nebulae are the material ancestors of the physical universes. Since these force organizers are under the jurisdiction of the master architect, they too would be subject to God the ultimate. Personalized adjusters. These extraordinary human divinities are also subject to God the ultimate, for they function as the all-wise and powerful executives of the master architect. They personally minister on the abstinite level in the transcendental realms of the ultimate. Here they minister the extraordinary, the unusual, and the unexpected. The description of the functions of these personalized adjusters is quite provocative. It calls to mind another statement that is made in connection with the discussion of the functions of providence. The Father may at any time interpose the fatherly hand in the stream of cosmic events, as determined by his will, his wisdom, and his love. Is such an act the equivalent of an abstinite intervention in the stream of finite events? If so, do the personalized adjusters have anything to do with such happenings? They could, because they serve as the agents of the full ministry of the Universal Father, personal, pre-personal, and super-personal. Personalized adjusters not only minister personally, pre-personally, and super-personally, they are these three qualities of being. They are the only beings in the universe who are thus omnipersonal. They are time-eternity beings and are in status existential and experiential. The only other place in the papers that uses such an unusual combination of adjectives is in the discussion of the universal absolute in the foreword. Personalized adjusters serve in the realms of the ultimate, the supreme ultimate, even to the level of the ultimate absolute. Their work for the ultimate extends even to the level of God the absolute. Who are the qualified vicegerents of the ultimate? So far as can be determined, there are three passages in the papers that make reference to these agents of the ultimate. And these passages tell us nothing about origin, nature, or function. But perhaps we can deduce something about them by analogy. What do the papers say about the unqualified supervisors of the Supreme? On page 636, paragraph 6, it states that the unqualified supervisors of the Supreme become more functional during the seventh stage of light and life. They are not finite, abstinent, ultimate, or infinite. They are supremacy and only represent God the Supreme. They personalize the supremacy of time and space and accordingly do not work in a moment. They work to bring about supreme unification. And again, in the preceding paragraph, if a super-universe were to be settled in light and life, the unqualified supervisors of the Supreme would become the high administrative body of the capital. They can contact directly with the abstinent level. They act as advisors during the evolutionary efforts, but do not serve as administrators until the Supreme is sovereign. We would reason by analogy. The qualified vice-chairs of the ultimate are the super-personalization of ultimacy, and they represent no one but God the ultimate. They super-personalize the ultimacy of transcendent time-space. They work to bring about the abstinent unification of the master universe. They can contact directly with absolute levels. If a segment of the master universe should reach the level of the attained sovereignty of the ultimate, they might serve as super-administrators. Prior to such development, they would likely act as counselors and advisors. But we should make note of one important difference. The supervisors of the Supreme are called unqualified. They must act for the Supreme in some unconditioned manner. The vice-chairs of the ultimate are designated qualified. Their representation of ultimate deity must in some manner be limited or otherwise conditioned. Section 7, the ultimacy of deity. The ultimacy of deity is not the function of an entity or trinity, but rather a level of reality on which the action of a certain phase of total deity takes place. At least three deity realities occupy or will occupy this level of total deity action. One, the Paradise Trinity. This is the eternal Trinity functioning in relation to the abstinent. This function provides for the existential coordination of the whole transcendental level prior to the formation of any experiential Trinity or the emergence of any experiential deity. In this functional relationship, the Paradise Trinity is designated as the Trinity of Ultimacy. 2. The Trinity Ultimate. The first experiential Trinity is the experiential complement of the Paradise Trinity in regard to the coordination of the master universe. The emergence of God the Ultimate is a direct consequence of the unification of this experiential Trinity on the space state of the master universe. 3. God the Ultimate. This experiential deity, emerging out of the unification of the Trinity Ultimate, completes the inventory of those whose attributes and functions will occupy the reality level of the ultimacy deity. And we should remember that the concept of the person of the ultimate is not to be separated from the other than personal aspects of his deity. The existential Trinity of Ultimacy, the experiential Trinity Ultimate, and the emerged reality of God the Ultimate constitutes the ultimacy of deity as we understand it. The functional interaction of all three would be concerned in the function of providence. Providence operating on the transcendental level of ultimacy. We are informed that providence is a function, and that this function is the composite of the other than personal overcontrol of the universe, and that it ranges from the sevenfold and the Almighty Supreme to the transcendental realm of the ultimacy of deity. Okay, are we with it? This is an excerpt from Appendix 21, attached to the study of the Master Universe, being the introduction to the Trinity of Trinities. the inherent indivisibility of deity eternalizes the paradise trinity on the absolute level. And when reality is projected on two sub-absolute levels, then experientializes two additional trinities. And finally, draws all three together into the Trinity of Trinities. This threefold Trinity unifies all actual deity, existential and experiential, and provides the foundation of deity unity, whereon an attempt may be made to experientialize the infinite. The binding force that holds this multiple Trinity structure together must be divinity, the characteristic, unifying, and coordinating quality of deity. We know that patterns may configure matter, mind, or spirit, or any combination of them. It can characterize personality, identity, entity, or non-living matter. It appears as something real because of the coexistence of personality and power. In the higher sense, pattern appears because of the coexistence of deity and energy. Two objects have relationships, but if there are three or more, they eventuate a system. Such a system is something more than a relationship that has become complex. Its members are connected, not by relationship to each other, but by virtue of relationship to the whole. Each one of the parts has a positional value. In a human being, it is personality that unifies the whole. And in the structure of eternity, it is divinity. It is the arrangement of the parts, their positional values, that constitutes the pattern of the whole, with its unpredictable factoids and its super additive qualities. A trinity is a super summation of its constituent parts. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and the functions of the whole are more than and other than the predictable sum of the total of the collective attributes of the parts. To illustrate, let us establish the difference between a non-pattern aggregation and the pattern of a system. The simplest system requires three parts. So let us take three objects of the same size, say 3 pennies, and let them fall at random on a tabletop. They fall by chance, and their positions have no particular significance, no discernible relationship. This is chance action, and we end up with 3 pennies on the top of the table. That is all. Now let us do this all over again, but differently. We pick the 3 pennies up, and this time we place them very carefully on the table in such manner that they make a perfect triangle. We still have 3 pennies on top of the table, and we also have a triangle. Each penny now has a positional value, but this positional value is not due to the parts. It is due to the significance which the whole imparts to its members. The triangle is the Gestalt. There is no English word for it. Configuration of the whole comes close, but it is not quite right. In any event, triangularity is a quality of the whole that is not predictable by an analysis of the parts. It signifies mind action and purpose in imposing the pattern of the system on what would otherwise be a mere aggregation. First priority is complete. I'll take it. I'll make it. How was that? This is the 6th draft of a study of the Master Universe. is a speculative exploration of the Urantia book. It is designed to explore the story of the Master Universe, and this story of the Master Universe is the story of creation and of evolution. In the prologue to this story, we will explore that which comes before the Master Universe. In the epilogue, that which follows, and we will try to adventure on beyond the confines of the Master creation. That which is before the Master Universe is pre-created. That which is after the Master Universe is super-created. The story of the Master Universe is the creative story. It is also the evolutional story, and it is the story of the growth and development of the Supreme Being and God the Ultimate. This study leads to the telling of 30 stories. There is the first story. This is the tale of finite growth and development. And there is the second story, the story of superfinite, absolute growth. And at the end, we can start, but we cannot finish the last story, the narrative of absolute growth. This narrative has been written as simply as could be contrived. It has been kept relatively free from references to the text of the paper. Most of these references will be found in the appendices which support the narrative. Each appendix has been written with the intent that it stand by itself as a short essay on a given subject. The narrative has been written for the interested readers. The appendices have been prepared for the serious student. The reader may well ask, why was this work written? It is the place of a preface to answer this question. The Urantia book is not written like a text. It is written like a symphony. Wonderful feelings of concept and movements of unfolding truth appear and reappear as the long story unfolds. Parts of this story are very melodious. The melody develops with such appealing simplicity that the reader is held enthralled. The story of Jesus is like this. A beautiful story of a man among men who grew up to become a living revelation of God among men. We all love this story. Some of the papers in the book are not so easy of comprehension. The movements of the harmonics of truth are more complex. The melody is not so easy to grasp, but the beauty is still there, even though it is less obvious. This work has been undertaken in an effort to bring out the beauty of the complex melody movements of the Urantia papers. Many of the papers which seem to be involved in obscure and far away are filled with exquisite movements of concept in the portraiture of living truth. If the truth in the involved beauty of these passages can be grasped, we could acquire a new horizon line against which to evaluate the things of this life and this world, and we could then perceive these things with a greater insight of a new perspective, the most far-ranging perspective that our minds can grasp. If we can come to feel the real beauty in the complex passages in the papers, then we may also develop a feeling for the melody of truth that unfolds in these same passages. And if we can grow in our appreciation of beauty and of truth, then we may perchance also grow in goodness. And if we should grow in all three, then are we growing godly. This is why this work was written. Prologue, Eternity. The Master Universe is a future eternal reality. But except for Havona, it is not a past eternal reality. Our study of the Master Universe should therefore properly begin with a consideration of Havona in relation to the post-Havona creation. In this prologue, we will first give consideration to certain pre-created acts of deity, which set the stage for the entire story of creation and evolution, the story of the Master Universe. Since we are starting out with the exploration of past eternity, we might as well do a good job of it and try to go back just as far as speculative imagination can take us. This prologue is accordingly presented in three divisions. First prologue, pre-existential speculation. begin with the infinite. Second prologue, the zero age. Third prologue, the first universe age. First prologue, pre-existential speculation. All through the Urantia papers, there are observations and comments that suggest that at the bottom, behind everything, before the beginning, is the infinite. Somehow we arrive at the feeling that all of the different manifestations of reality, the absolutes, the deities, the trinities, are different aspects and different phases of the infinite. God seems to be the personification of the infinite. The universal Father is the name that we give to God in our realization of his relationship to us, his mortal children. Before the beginning of beginnings, there is that being, that infinite one, who we know as God. His infinity must be the foundation on which he has built all of the structure of deity and absolute and trinity, and all manner of other realities, deified and undeified, existential and experiential, actual and potential, time realities and eternity realities, perfect existences and imperfect existences, space creation and non-space conditions. In short, everything that could exist, every when and everywhere. This being, this infinite one, is likely known but to two, his deity equal, eternal Son and their infinite Spirit. So even as infinite, the Father is not without understanding association. But the eternal coordinates of God know him by virtue of their inherent status as co-infinite beings. To us, of the later appearing, experiencing existences, the quest for the infinite is the absolute challenge of the eternity of eternity, the absolutely endless voice of discovery into the infinity of God on the outside, while we are in process of the qualitative exploration of that fragment of God on the inside that even now indwells us in this life in the flesh. We start this exploration of past eternity with the firm belief that the unproven basis for all that happens is the infinite, that being whom we call God. We will pursue the unfolding of his divine purpose as we are able to discern it throughout time and transcended time and on into future eternity to see how far we may hope to come in the quest for the knowledge of the final Father, the unqualified Father, the limitless Father, the absolute Father, even the Father is. Second prologue, the zero age. If we are going to study the Master Universe, it would be a good idea to start at the very beginning of the story. The story itself divides into 6 major parts. These are the 6 universe ages. We are now living in the second of these ages. The first one is the age of Havona, the central and eternal universe. Eternity itself dawns with eternal Havona already in existence. Prior to this, there is no factual reality, but we may still have valid concepts. Section 1, before the times of Havona. Factual reality and valid concepts. In our system of counting, the number 1 is the first real number. Nevertheless, our arithmetic recognizes that behind the reality of the number 1 is the concept of 0. 0 is hardly a factual reality, but it certainly is a valid concept, and our mathematics would do very badly without it. The first universe age is the first real age, but behind it is the concept of a zero age, an age before the times of eternal harmony. The papers make use of this zero concept without actually using the term zero age. They speak of a conjectured state of affairs prior to the appearance of the central universe and the infinite spirit. It is this state of affairs that we propose to call the zero age. Thinking about the zero age is like thinking about the zero mark on a 12-inch ruler. We do not actually measure anything with this mark, but it does show where the first inch starts. Source relationships in eternity. When we try to think about origins in eternity, we are in real trouble. For example, God is the Father of an eternal Son who is just as old as God. Suppose that we forget all about eternity and use some comfortable time language. If we do this, we will find that there are three source relationships between the three persons of deity and the paradise of the system. One, if the infinite spirit and the central universe are eternal, then it logically follows that, two, the eternal Son and the Isle of Paradise are eternaler, because they were already on the scene when the Spirit and Havona appeared. And if the Son and Paradise are eternaler, then, three, the Universal Father is most eternal, eternalist, because he is the Father of the Son and at the same time the source of paradise. This line of reasoning helps us think of at least three stages of development inside the zero age: eternal, eternally, and eternal. Suppose we start out with the oldest of these. Let us go back, or in, as far as we can go, and then move outward, step by step, toward the age of Havona. A voyage of discovery, and then move outward, step by step, toward the age of Havona. Section 2. A voyage of discovery into past eternity. When we go back just as far as we can in our thinking about God, we find that we are trying to imagine what God would be like before he became the Father of the eternal Son. This is a pre-Father idea of God. It is not a factual reality, but it is a valid concept. What was it like when God was all alone, and before he had even made any plans about creating anything? If we can think this far back, then we may be able to start out at the very heart of the zero age, and from there, work our way outward toward factual reality. 1. Static deity. We're going to have to use a few rather unusual words in this study. Words like static. We cannot avoid these words, but we can define them as we go along. Static is in part defined in Webster as resting, quiescent, not moving, acting, or exerting force of any kind. Stable. At the heart of the zero age, we find quietness, absolute stability. Nothing is moving. Here God is all sufficient unto himself. He lives within himself. He is self-contained. He has an inside, but no outside. A within, but no beyond. An eternal present, but neither past nor future. He is self-existent. God is. Now here's the point that we should bear in mind. What we have just been considering is not something theoretical that existed a long time ago and then stopped. It is just as true today as it was way back in the depths of past eternity, and it will go right on being true for all future eternity. This means that we have got to think in a larger way about God. He can be static at the same time that he is being, everything else. He does all these many things at the same time, and he keeps on doing them all the time. He does not have to go from one thing to another. 2, potential deity. Now we are taking our first step away from the heart of the zero age toward factual reality. And again, a definition is in order. Potential is in part defined in Webster as follows: existing in possibility, not in actuality. Becoming as distinguished from being. Possible or in the making as opposed to actual or realized. Latent. At this point, we are thinking of God after he has made a plan. He has not created anything as yet, but he plans to do this. God has now purposed to do something, and that something accordingly becomes possible, becomes potential. We are at this point thinking about God after he has decided to express his will. He is self-willed deity. Perhaps we can understand potential deity better if we make a picture of it. Suppose we go back and think of static deity as a circle with a dot in the center. Now let the circle constrict around the middle until we have something that looks like an hourglass. Let the dot be in the center of one of the lobes of the hourglass. This dot stands for God's will, and it is moving away from that part of infinity that is going to be without will. Now pull the 2 lobes of the hourglass completely apart, and we have 2 circles, and one of them has a dot in it. This is the one that is called deity. It has moved away from the other circle because God decided to do this. The other circle is named not deity, or non-deity. It does not have will. It can respond to something, but it does not start anything. When God moves away from this non-deity circle, he changes what he moves. He qualifies it. What is left behind has not changed, has not moved, is not qualified, hence is unqualified. Since all of this is happening on the absolute level, it is customary to name that which was left behind, that absolute which was left unqualified, the unqualified absolute. That which moves is qualified. It is also deity. So it is named the qualified absolute, or the deity absolute. Let us not forget that we are studying potential deity. We have developed 2 realities, the qualified deity absolute and the unqualified absolute. We should think of them as limitless reservoirs that God has set aside. They contain all his plans for the future, and he will draw on them as he makes his plans become real, become actualized. If these plans have to do with things, matter, and not personal realities, God will draw on the unqualified absolute. If these plans have to do with spirit and personalities and the like, then he will draw upon the deity absolute. 3, associated deity. Now we are taking our 3rd step toward the outer edge of the zero age and factual reality. Again, a definition is in order. Associated is defined in Webster as tending to, inducing, or characterized by association. Perhaps the first associative act that we should note is the association of the 2 absolutes, qualified and unqualified. It comes about something like this. Since both of them came from the same original static reality, they are related. And the relationship between them is quite real. We could put it this way. When the one became 2, then we have one and another. The word and is also a reality, and it universally links together the 2 absolutes that contain all of God's plans for the future, the absolutes of potentiality. Since this linking up action is universal, it has been named the universal absolute. The universal absolute links the other two together like the middle link in a three-link chain. This is a good way to visualize the three absolutes. Draw three circles so that the middle one cuts a little way into the outer two. The next associated act that we should think about is how God becomes the universal Father. Up to now, we have been thinking of him as a pre-Father. He has been the dot inside the circle of the deity absolute. Actually, he is pre-God as well as pre-Father. He is the absolute person. Now he separates himself from the absolute person. He becomes the Father of that absolute person. And the absolute person is thus transformed into God's original Son, the eternal Son, the second person of deity. This is the beginning of the divine fraternity of the eternal persons of deity, which will soon be completed with the appearance of the third person, the infinite Spirit. Section 3. Existential thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. We have used four unusual words in the caption of this section. They will bear defining before we go on with our study. Existential is a word that is especially used in the paper. It means something eternal, without a beginning or an ending, and with no need to learn by experience. Full knowledge is possessed without any experience. Existential is used as the opposite of experiential. God is existential. Man, as an example, is experiential. Now for the other terms. They are borrowed from the philosopher Hegel, who made much of them. We will use them many times in our study. Thesis, antithesis, and synthesis are in part defined in Webster as follows. With Hegel, thesis is the proposition or conception representing the first stage of developing thought, contrasting with the second stage, or antithesis, which negates the thesis, and with a third stage, or synthesis, in which thesis and antithesis are brought together. Thesis, then, is a proposition, a statement, a presentation. Antithesis, which would be better understood if it were written antithesis, is something that is the opposite, something negative to the thesis. Synthesis is the bringing of the two together in a harmonious whole. This three-step process is something that we will observe more than once in our study of the universe. Synthesis of the three absolutes of potentiality. We have already seen this three-step process in operation, but we did not apply our new terms to it. When the qualified and the unqualified absolutes are linked together by the universal absolute, this is a synthesis of two opposites. The qualified absolute is the potential deity thesis, and the unqualified absolute is the potential non-deity antithesis. The non-synthesis of actual reality. Let us go back to the times when God is divesting himself of the absolute person. And it becomes